how are we going to organize the class? There's two kind of ways to think about this. One is I want to understand, and science wants to understand the entire world, the entire biosphere. So that is everything that's living and non-living, how the butterfly that flaps its wings in the Amazon impacts the hurricane that forms, and whatever. So right, there's a huge amount of stuff that happens in the biosphere. There's everything from carbon dioxide and climate change to atoms to elephant ears, right? Well, that's a whole lot to try to understand. So most people say, well, I don't think I'm going to understand the whole biosphere. So instead, I'm going to think of an ecosystem. And the ecosystem is everything living and non-living in a particular area. So we could become experts in the Arctic tundra or a tropical reef or a temperate rainforest. But even in an ecosystem, there's a lot going on, right? There's water, there's salinity, there's plants, there's animals. So we could think of a community, and the community is all the living creatures in an ecosystem. But you're like, well, Dr. Ward, shark and a coral aren't exactly similar, so maybe I want to learn all about the sharks. So we could decide to look in a population. And a population are all the individuals of a species in a particular area. And what is going on in this population is these fish are worried about a predator. If you live in the open ocean, there's nowhere to hide except behind each other. So what these guys are doing are hiding behind each other in what is called a beat ball, and they're grouped tightly as a form of protection. Now, when the big shark comes through and eats one, everybody else is happy because they all survived. In any case, you could look at a population, but if any of you have ever noticed, a population just aren't the same, right? All the students in this class aren't the same. We have different ages. Some have dangly bits between their legs and some don't. They have different colors of skin. They have different sizes. They're just different. So instead of looking at a population, maybe we need to look at one particular organism. Okay, I can handle one of you, right? I can handle a turtle. Well, how does a turtle work exactly? I don't know. I better cut it up and look at all the different organ systems inside of it. So we have things that mush food and pull the energy out of food. And then we have stuff that spurts blood around, and we have stuff that we got the shell, and we got all sorts of stuff in a turtle. And man, talk to Dr. Fogarty about anatomy. I don't know very much about it. All right, so we could learn about each of these individual organs. Oh, what is that? Well, that's actually the inside of the esophagus, the part of the turtle that takes the food from its mouth to its stomach. And it's got all these weird down pointing things apparently to help get the food to go down. I don't really understand, but we could spend a lot of time understanding why you would want down pointy things on an esophagus. And to do that, we might need to cut up and look at the tissue. And the tissue is one particular kind of cells that are all grouped together to work. Well, what's in a tissue? A tissue is made of individual cells. Now, the cell is actually the last time we can talk about an individual unit of life, because once we squish the cell, it's not alive anymore. And actually, this picture is a little misleading. So we've gone from turtle tissue to plant cell, and I know that because it's got that big central vacuole in the middle. But turtles also have cells in them. Well, then, like, cells are kind of complicated. It looks like there's all sorts of different stuff in that cell, and in fact there's chloroplast, there's that central vacuole, and ultimately all those are made up of molecules. This turns out is a caffeine molecule. Caffeine is from plants. It's a nice insecticide. It also happens to function in our nervous system as a pick-me-up. And then those molecules are made out of individual atoms, and then we can talk about what atoms are made of, but even that is beyond the scope of what I want to talk about. So now we've got a real problem, right? I just said to understand a biosphere, we understand an ecosystem. To understand an ecosystem, we understand a community. To understand a community, we understand a population. But somehow we've reduced ourselves to an atom, And understanding that a carbon atom has 6 protons and 6 neutrons and 6 electrons doesn't seem like we're going to be able to get to a turtle or a biosphere. So every time we go down a level of organization, we understand some things, but we also lose some stuff. And the way this class is going to be organized is we're going to start at the atom and we're going to work our way back up the system. And as we go back up the system, we're going to try to understand the emergent properties, those things that are unique, those things that are not always easy to predict based on the level of organization that was lower. You don't need to have memorized all these different levels of organization, but what we do want to say is there are really two ways of looking at biology. Well, two main ways classes are organized. One is top down, so we start at the biosphere and work down. That's actually the way NC State does it. We can also look at the atom and work up. That's the way UNC does it, and actually UNC's most schools do it that way, and Durham Tech has just chosen to do the start at the atom and work our way up. So that's what we're going to do. Again, don't bother to memorize these levels of organization. This video assumes that you watch the emergent properties video that I linked and cannot get to play during a slideshow. In any case, what is important about emergent properties? Emergent properties are ones that you can't necessarily predict based on the level of organization below. And what do I mean by that? I mean that if I took a car apart and threw all the pieces on the ground, you might be able to figure out some things that would happen. For example, you might be able to figure out there was probably some seats, maybe, depending on how much those got smashed. You got some wheels, so something's moving. You got a steering wheel, but it's not obvious that that would you put your hands on that and steer with it, right? So it wouldn't be obvious to somebody that hadn't seen a car put together what would happen. It would be pretty hard to get this car together. Perhaps a better example, because the car has the specialized parts, if I threw a Lego set down on the ground, you know the Legos are going to come together somehow, but it's going to be really hard to decide if they're going to come together and form Hogwarts Castle or the Millennium Falcon or something else entirely, right? So you've got all the parts, but getting it to come together is really challenging. And that's what the idea of these emergent properties are. By the way, I really like the Starlings. They do cool patterns.